All right, we are recording, just so you all know. I would like to welcome you today to Working with Process Servers and Private Detectives during COVID-19. I, of course, am Jennifer Ellis. I'm chair of the Solo and Small Firm section, the Pennsylvania Bar Association. I'm joined today by my friend and our speaker, Michele Harris. Michele Harris, LPI, is a licensed, bonded, and insured private investigator, process server, and notary covering Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. She's been in the industry since 1987, first working for other firms, then opening her own in 2005. Her office now offers 12 locations, each as a result of client demand for her services. And she's a proud sponsor and speaker for many organizations and has been recognized by ALM, Legal Intelligencer, as one of the top 3 investigation agencies for the past 5 years. And I know she's nominated again this year. I can tell you that when I need a private investigator, I call Michele. And I cannot give you a better recommendation than that. Michele, please begin.
Thank you. I will say that this COVID thing has really done a number on, obviously, the legal industry, as you all know. We have run into, we are essential. We've always been essential, unlike you guys, for a while, couldn't do much of anything. But the problem is finding somebody that's open and willing to do the work. Our team went out and there's a thing called contact tracing classes that teach you a little bit about COVID-19, how it gets, how people get it. By doing that, we then were able to prepare a little bit more about doing service or process. My team is regulated, and a lot of others are, where they are now providing gloves and masks to people. We are allowed to serve. If you come to your glass door, let's just say that this screen is your glass door, and you don't open it, as long as I can identify you and you shake your head or wave your hand or something, we can post it or drop serve it because of this particular thing that is going on at the moment. We've had several individuals that will open the door and then say, hold on, let me go get gloves before I touch it. We had considered about putting things in plastic bags, but then it was a little hard for people to read. We didn't do that. As a whole, and I belong to several organizations that do process serving and private investigations, we have, agreed that we really just can't put it in a plastic bag. It's just, again, it's adding another layer of possible contamination. So we've, been told, like I said, we can just post it as long as they see it. We've had a few people that'll just, peek out the window behind Gene. Gene will turn around and peek out his window, and I just see his face, but I can't see his body. And we've been told that that's been acceptable as long as we explain that it's occurring during the COVID process. Once we all go green, we're not going to probably be able to get away with the peeking out the window kind of thing. We've, are okay with doing even posting once we do go back to green. The team and the organizations I belong to Pennsylvania and New Jersey Process Servers and Private Investigator Associations. We have all said that we should have our team follow this protocol through the end of the year, through December, even if we do all go green, just so that somebody doesn't refuse service. We've had, ironically, only one person say that we contaminated them and actually threatened to sue. They indicated, Jen, you'll get a kick out of this. It was a quarry. We had to go serve a quarry, and the guys were all in the quarry. None of them had masks on, and apparently the owner of the quarry's daughter just had a lung transplant, and one of the people that was there was the son or son-in-law. I don't remember which. And thankfully, we wear body cameras, and he said that we contaminated the scene, but we had the masks and the gloves on, but their team did not. So I was the only person that's really given us a hard time about it. He's actually, I contacted, an attorney, and he's been in contact with my attorney, and, we have not told him we have a video. We started doing the video because of COVID-19 wearing a body camera. It's a suggestion. It's not a recommendation. As far as a lot of other things that have been going on relative to investigations, a lot of y'all have come back and said, okay, can you confirm addresses? Because, the accident, is right before your deadline, or the case is right before your service deadline. So there's a lot of us doing a lot of skip tracing. The other reason we're doing a lot of skip tracing is the sheriffs still are not serving, as far as I know, in any of the counties. Even though I know, like I said, I have an office in Allegheny, they are in the green, but the sheriff said that they still have paperwork from March that they haven't even gotten to, or February that they haven't gotten to. So we've been doing a lot of services for that. And I know a lot of my counterparts have been doing the same thing. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, unless we're in that stupid Philadelphia County rural area. I don't know how they're dealing with that because there's nobody for us to talk to about that. But all the other counties pretty much have, said call a process server, which has, been a good for the process serving industry. It has, geez, last week we had 100, my firm had 110 subpoenas alone. There's a guy that I talk to on a daily basis. He had upwards of 100 because there's nobody out there really doing services. Unfortunately, a lot of them have closed. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you think you're going to have any services or any skip tracing or any investigations down the pipeline, you need to check with them now. Granted, I know a lot of you have started to open back up, but you or your assistants need to check with them now to see if they're even open. There were, and I've spoken about this before, there was about 3,000 private investigators. I don't have the number for process servers, but there were about 3,000 private investigators in Pennsylvania, and I'm hearing that, a good quarter of them are not going to reopen. They've just chose not to reopen, whether they couldn't get the loan, they chose to retire, they were law enforcement. So you want to make sure you have a cat. You want to make sure that you follow up with that. And I really would suggest that you ask your process server, if you're going to use one, are you wearing the mask and the gloves? Because you don't want somebody on the other side, they'll be smart like Jen and say, okay, did you do the proper protocols to get it thrown out? And I would hate to have something like that thrown out because, somebody says, they didn't wear a mask or gloves and, they didn't accept it for that reason, or they left it out on the front porch because they didn't know if there was a contamination issue. The other big thing we're doing as private investigators, believe it or not, is a lot of following up to make sure people are actually homesick with COVID are actually working from home like you're supposed to be working from home, and not, down the beach, on the beach, all day long. We have a couple of big manufacturing companies and a couple smaller, like not construction, but a couple smaller companies that they're asking to make sure, they're asking us to follow them to make sure that they're, again, not out mulching during the day when they're sending in billable hours, or not out, down the beach when they're saying that they're home working from home. I mean, granted, I can't see what you're doing in the house. So if you're in the house, I guess you're fine. But there's been a big upswing in that kind of service to, verify that, you're home with COVID. We had a paper returned because the gentleman texted and said he'd been in the hospital with COVID in a coma. And obviously I can't confirm that based on HIPAA, but we went and talked to the neighbors, and the neighbors like, no, he's out cutting the grass every day and everything like that. So we ended up being able to subserve the wife for that reason, because he said he was in the hospital. He was never in the hospital. He was never sick. He's always been working. He's self-employed, like I am. And he just told the guy that he borrowed the money from that, he was homesick with COVID. We've also been picking up some work from like the district justices as well. They can appoint us to do services as a, as a private investigator or a process server, because their constables, again, don't want to go out and do the work, or they're covered under that, Montgomery County is not allowed to do anything. They're still in the yellow kind of thing. They're not supposed to do services, and they don't want to put themselves at risk. So it's been challenging, I will say, to stay in business for any of us, big or small firms, law firms, any kind of business, because of what, this unknown COVID is. I foresee, things going to happen where, if there's a vaccine and people don't get it, we're going to have to keep doing this. And that's something that I keep myself educated with. And again, I get a lot of this from the organization, so I'm not just talking about my team. Because like I said, I'm part of the Pennsylvania and the New Jersey, Process Server and Private Investigators Association. How this is going to change things. My staff has continued to work from home, so that, has made it easy. The hard part that we've been dealing with, again, in this industry is notaries, because, most notaries are at the bank or in your office, and you're not in your office. So how do you get something notarized? So we have gotten A couple of our notaries meet up every other day with the people on our team to do that. And, that's been creating some backlog and, some hassle because a lot of places require notarized affidavits unless they're federal.
May I interrupt you, Michelle, if that's
Yeah,
okay? First, I want to tell people, if you have questions, you may raise your hand. You can literally show us and raise your hand, or if you hover down towards the bottom under reactions, you'll see there's a little smiley face, and you can raise your hand there. And I can unmute you, and you can ask your questions. And you may also type them in the box. Michelle, we have a lot of issues with notaries here in the legal profession. Gene is on, and he is a remote notary, and he did a session for us on that a while back. Now you have physical notaries. How are you handling going places and doing notarizations right now?
We, again, are doing the masks and the gloves sort of thing. We prefer to do it, out on the porch, if you will, or not in the car, but outside. One of my girls actually does real estate closings and has been doing notaries through the entire thing. We all tried to get the remote notary, but getting a hold of the company that, approves, gets that software has been crazy ridiculous. And it's crazy expensive to do that. We just have decided as a whole in our group that we're just going to, keep doing them. And like I said, I only have, out of my staff, I only have 3 notaries. So, in 12 locations. So we meet, one of us will meet somebody, we'll take a pile and meet once a week. New Jersey, and I'm not real happy with it, but New Jersey says that you can scan and email it to me, even though I'm not a remote notary in New Jersey, because they don't have that offering over there, but I am a notary in Jersey, that you can scan and email it and stamp it. And I'm not real comfortable with that, but they sent a letter out and said, you can do that. I mean, obviously this is only my team. I'm not doing, that remote kind of thing any other way. And my girls over in New Jersey are, going and doing them. But again, we prefer to do them outside. I mean, unless it's somebody like, Jen, I know you. I would wear the mask and the whole get up and go in your house and not have a problem, because I would trust the fact that, you're okay. But we've been pretty much, like I said, doing them outside, doing them on the hood of the car, because we can't even do them like in a coffee shop yet, because we can't even go inside and do that. So
you're going to people's houses and doing them that way?
Yeah, we still are. I mean, we're, or the, going to the law firm and, obviously they're allowed to open for certain things, or we're allowed to go in there for, last I heard, and Gene can correct me if I'm wrong, is just for real estate closings and power of attorneys and estate things. The only reason we're supposed to go inside for those, but the couple of attorneys that I do them for, we either meet at the client's house or we'll meet, in the vestibule, downstairs or something like that. And everybody will have their ID and I'll have my book and fill it out and we'll go from there. I mean, it's been a big challenge. I mean, I tell people, I'll help you. The big calls I get for notaries, though, unfortunately still are for like doing title transfers. Even though I know how to do it because I worked for a tag agency for 20 years, we can't do title transfers. I can sign the title, but that doesn't transfer the title. So I've gotten more questions about, Department of Motor Vehicle related things and more calls for that as a notary than more so affidavits, because, we have to do them ourselves as process servers if it's a requirement for a notary. Like I said, we took the approach that, I initially went and applied for waivers in all the states, and it came back, within 2 or 3 days that we didn't need them because we were considered essential. Especially even the notaries, because I need a notary for the affidavits. So that's kind of the loophole that we got through for that. But, we weren't advertising or pushing the fact that, we could do other notaries other than obviously like the real estate or the estate and the will type notaries.
Right. But now things are opening up more and lawyers are allowed, we're still supposed to be remote as much as we can be, but we are allowed back in our offices now. And I assume that releases some of the restrictions that come with working with regular notaries, but we still have to obey the CDC guidelines, which means that people have to wear masks pretty much all day in their firms. Although most of us read the regulations, if you have a private office and you shut your door, you can take the mask off when you're in there. So the steps are probably having enough masks throughout the day, or only having people work part-time, and of course, if you're handing over pens and things, you really want to get away from that. You want to have clean, disinfected pens for people to use. you know, and how you hand around the papers and everything. You have to be careful with all that, I assume.
I have, I tell them when I sign up to do a notary, I tell them to, bring their own. I'm not going to share mine. I'm not going to use mine. I know in Allegheny County, I got a couple calls this morning because they're in the green. They seem to be working more in the office at this point, if they can. I foresee a lot of businesses staying this way, honestly, because I think, it's going to save them, a lot of rent if they can continue to do this and work from home, and maybe just rent like a Regis or a Corman suite or something like that just for face-to-face, or downsize into something smaller in their building. I've had some talks, again, Allegheny's in the green, so I've had some talks with my clients in Allegheny County, and they're actually considering it. Places that have had a whole floor are considering just keeping, the left side of the corridor or something like that, just for that kind of stuff, because they see that this works.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from a lot of lawyers. They're going to downsize. I know we have a large firm attorney in Tom Wilkinson here, and I know that he and I have discussed, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Tom, how the impact of COVID on commercial real estate is not even begun to be seen, because we do have a lot of lawyers and other small businesses and large businesses saying, we don't need all this space. We're comfortable letting people work from home now. And I think we will see more of that. Do you foresee that causing complexity to you, though, as a process server, as people spread out? So if you need to serve a process for businesses and you find that people are all over the place now, that's going to make things a little harder on you, isn't it?
It does, because we've been going to businesses, and even though, you could, again, get into the vestibule to the security guard will tell me, oh, no, they're not letting up anybody onto the 12th floor, and they're not coming down for service. So I have to get then your approval or permission to leave it with the security guard, even though he works for Allied Barton or something, based on the fact that, I heard a conversation with him calling ABC company, and they're like, they're not coming down, you take it. And I really see that's going to be a big problem, because they're not staffed to all these companies in these big buildings. And I defer to you all when that happens, but I foresee that's going to be a big problem. A lot of places have been closed, or because of what's going on with the goofy riots, boarded up, and I can't even get in. So now a lot of attorneys are telling me to find home addresses for the CEOs, and boy, that really doesn't make them happy. To go to their homes and serve them at their homes. I'm like, well, your business is closed. I need the records. Well, the records are at the office. The office is closed. Well, I'm sorry. I'm doing, what I was told. We were good up until about the last 2 weeks. And then we've gotten a lot of push and pull from every side, because, I'm the middleman doing my job. So if I have to find them at home, that costs you more, unfortunately. But it has to be served, because they still need to get, we need to do the due diligence, and they still need to, be in court on a certain time. I've come to find another change that has happened during this is, on the subpoena where it says, deliver the records to, they all want to use my address because you're not in the office. So they don't want to give up Jen's home address, because Jen's at home and she needs the records. So I've been getting a lot of them. I don't mind. I have a security system, and I have a four-legged security guard too. So I don't mind. They can deliver them here. I don't mind. And my other staff, my other staff's not usually home. So, they're all out working. So they all have to come to me, because I work, from home most of the time. But I find that's been a big change, that, they need a new address for the documents. So I don't even know how it's going to affect, the entire industry, because, you're not going to have an office. So where do you change your address on the bottom part? We have to fill out your name and address and the firm number and, the firm information and your licensing. I see that that's going to create a problem as well. But it's just a workaround that, unfortunately in this industry I have to deal with. I take photographs when we go to these closed places and show that they're closed. There's a lot of the subpoenas that we serve to the registered agents. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. The CT Corps and the CSC Corps and stuff like that. Harrisburg's been closed, and they only want subpoenas now, as of Friday, certified mail. They said to my server, because you can call them and get the instructions from them, they said to my server, call me on Monday and we'll see if they're going to let us come back in, but they may not let them come back in either. and sending them certified mail is going to delay getting records, and that's going to be a scary thing, because who knows when they go to the post office, and you need those records in 3 days. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes that we're all going to have to get used to, whether it's, and New York, I do some work for a couple clients in New York. They've been getting permission to serve via email, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I see, is that going to put me out of business? Maybe, but there's, other work that I can deal with, that, we can, still do. But, again, I know that the email thing and the service by Facebook and all that was still uncharted territories at one point. The people that I know that we've been able to do service by email are only corporations. I will say that. We have not gotten approval to do it for business, for like the CEO at home necessarily, because he works from home. But, an individual at home, we have not gotten any approval for. So I don't know if that's going to be the way, because we've had a few doctors that are closed that we've had to serve we've gotten permission to serve via email. They had to send me an email saying that they would accept service via email. Then when they got it, send me another email back saying they would accept service. If not, then they would make us keep going back out. So, that's more work for you guys, but maybe it's easier. I don't know. Maybe that's the way of the future. And that's just, again, something that, it's happened before. There was a time when, process servers, kind of like went on the downward turn because everything had to be served either by the sheriff or by certified mail at one point. Mm-hmm. And that obviously changed because the mail is horrible right now. And what's to say that the carrier doesn't say they made 3 attempts and they didn't really, and it ends up with a bigger issue. So again, I see that coming. I just don't know how they're going to do affidavits via certified mail if you never get the card back.
Well, that and a lot of there are some posties I'm not doing certified mail. They're refusing to bring it. So
exactly. So like I said, it's been a challenge for us. For us to try to stay up with the trend, not that it's the trends, but what's going on. Even like in the city of Philadelphia, we were told in the city of Philadelphia all last week, do not come in the city of Philadelphia.
Right.
Into Center City, into South Philly. The police turned us around at the borders, and we're like, these are for hearings. We have to post these. And they're like, nope, we're not letting you in. So we just, got the name and put it on the affidavit that unfortunately, we're being told we're not allowed in. Same with downtown Pittsburgh. We were turned around in downtown Pittsburgh last week. And I know it's not, our topic is really COVID, but it's the situation at hand. It's whatever happens daily, whether it's a hurricane or, COVID or, the riots that, we all have to, deal with, notaries and trying to get mobile notaries. The fee for a mobile notary, when I reached out to some of these companies, they wanted like $500 or $600 just for us to be remote notaries, even though we already paid, we had to pay in Pennsylvania. The class is about $350 to $400 to take the class and become a notary. So they want us to, put out $1,000 or more to do the, the remote notary. So, we've had that issue that we're, again, we're trying to at least get one person in my staff that can do that. But, again, it's been challenging to do the notaries. Like I said, this whole industry, I think we're all going to be at a learning curve. You learn and teach me, I learn and teach you kind of thing to figure out what the best situation is, mm-hmm. Or the best way to handle a situation. And if it comes to be, like I said, mail, even though we know we're not doing it, or email, then, that's the way it's going to be. But I think serving individuals by email is just not going to work. Because how many people do you have their personal emails? I could find it, but there's no way and you could too, Jen. We could find emails, but there's no way of knowing how current they are.
Right. How do you prove that they actually received it unless they respond and say they received it? There are tools you can buy. There is software that you can add to your email that essentially acts as a tracer. But even then, now you're going to have issues of who received it and other arguments. But there is software, folks, you can look into that helps there. I was following a friend on Facebook who is a solo in another state, folks. He does workers' compensation, which is a big area right now related to COVID. And he was saying that some of the firms were announcing, not asking, announcing that they were only going to accept service via email, and they were going to insist on service via email. And of course, you can't just unilaterally decide we're only going to take service via email, or we're only going to do service via email. You would have to negotiate that with the other side. But then you also want to make sure that when the service is completed, that the served party or the attorney, whomever you're serving, acknowledges receipt, because otherwise they're going to attack that service. But don't, I'm sure none of you would do this, or anyone listening later, but don't just unilaterally say, we're only going to accept service and do service via email. You can't do that. You have to have agreement that you're within that you're doing this, and you're essentially going around the rules by agreement. You can't just unilaterally do it. And even then, you have to make sure that you have acknowledgement of receipt of some kind, so that if the person denies later that they received service, you have to watch that. Because I know I don't have access to nearly any of the tools you do, Michele. We've talked about skip tracing, finding missing people, and there are all sorts of ways to do that. But even if I find a list of emails, let's say I go on Lexis Advance and use their tool for sake of argument, and I find a bunch of potential email addresses that were connected to the person at one point. One is, we don't know if those email addresses were ever connected to the person. Two is, we don't know if those email addresses are still good. Three is, we don't know if the person actually checks those email addresses. I don't know how many email addresses I have. Some of them I just use for dummy accounts for things. I never check those email addresses. I mean, and so if you tried to serve me through them, it would fail. And I would have, you wouldn't really have any argument that you legitimately served me. You'd have to find the right email address to serve me. And that, in my case, might not be too hard, but in the case of the average person is going to be challenging, because most people don't have their own domain name. And even if they do, it doesn't mean they're checking the email or they're using email. And you might think, well, it'll bounce back, but that's not necessarily the case. First of all, if it's a good email address, it won't bounce back. It could be going to some third party, or they may just not check it. And even if it's a bad email address, sometimes you don't get the bounce. So you can't assume that the email is good. I mean, there's really no replacement for putting it in the person's hand or taping it to the door with a witness such as Michele or one of her people, especially having added body cameras, which is very smart, to have added those body cameras. Also, I'm just going to mention that we're not doing CLE, and this is not about ethics. Do remember, folks, that under 5.3, it is your obligation as the lawyer to make sure that anybody you work with understands and follows our ethical rules, and as well as the law. So you don't want to be hiring a process server who doesn't understand both of those things. You want to make sure you hire somebody who knows the laws, so you are not, through the process server, somehow violating the law, or the private detective, if they're a private detective. I mean, speaking of workers' comp, we have the issue of tracing COVID, and whether somebody got COVID at their office or at the supermarket where they work and whatever. And that is a huge issue right now, as far as workers' compensation liability for COVID, right? Yeah. Never mind the people claiming to be at work when they're not at work, which is a huge issue because they're working from home. But they're, as you say, Michele, they're at the beach, and I've seen other articles about people using PIs for that purpose. And of course, now with so many people at home, I suppose if you're tracing people for a personal injury to see if they're truly injured, or workers' compensation to see if they're truly injured and they're staying at home all the time, it's probably difficult if they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and staying home to figure out whether people are in fact injured as they are claiming in a lawsuit, right?
Believe it or not, like I said earlier, we have a couple major corporations in Montgomery County that we do this for, and in the last, I want to say 2-3 weeks, people have been really active. Yeah. So that's worked in our favor, and obviously the corporations are happy. Because now especially the beaches are open, and now the stores are open, so people are going, to the stores and And I'm not talking the grocery stores. I'm talking, like the Bloomingdale's or whatever. All them are starting to open. So that has been a good thing for us. Back to what you had said earlier, I just want to say this, that process servers, unfortunately, in Pennsylvania and most states, with the exception like California, Florida, New York, they don't have to be insured. So again, I strongly suggest, if you're going to use a process server, obviously try the sheriff or a constable, because they're covered. But secondly, I would suggest using a private investigator, because we have to be licensed, bonded, and insured. Make sure too, now that a lot of people have been closed for a while, that their insurance did not lapse. That way, again, if we're not doing something per your rules, then we've got that $1 million insurance policy. If we do something wrong. Especially with all the unknowns right now, you really want to use, I know, you guys all have your own insurance, but you really want to use, any kind of vendor. You want to make sure that they have some kind of licensure, bond or insurance. I mean, the bond in my states is nominal. That's $5,000 or $10,000, depending on which state, I'm talking about. But, we're all required to have that $1 million worth of liability insurance. And I really think now that that's something you want to make sure that any of your vendors have, because, okay, what happens if you send me to due process, and then the next thing you know, that person gets COVID? Well, then they're going to want to come after you for you sending me, but we really don't, so that way, your vendor has insurance. It's just something, again, that the organizations I belong to have been talking about, make sure you have insurance. We've been pushing for process servers to have to get bonded or insured in our states. But nobody wants to regulate us, so to speak, in Pennsylvania. The private investigators want to be regulated just by the state police, not each individual county, because each individual county has its own rules in Pennsylvania. Whether you get an ID card, whether you're allowed to carry an ID card, whether you get a badge, whether you're not allowed to carry a badge, how you perform your job, how much insurance. Like, some counties don't require a bond, but they require insurance. So, that's a lot of problem that we're dealing with. But like I said, I think with what's going on in this day and age, I really think you need to make sure that your vendors are, licensed and insured. I mean, I know that's, putting out a lot of process servers, and I don't mean to do that intentionally. I'm just thinking about the fact of what's going to come. We don't know what the unknowns are going to be. And you don't want to be paying out all this money for, services, again, where, the server may have infected, somebody, or the investigator on surveillance, followed them and then caused them to go into a store to get away from them, and then they got infected. And, so there's a lot of unfortunate unknowns still, that we're dealing with. And, like I said, by me taking the contact tracers class, I've learned, various different ways that you get it, and, how it gets transmitted and stuff like that. Because, once Pennsylvania opens it up and once contact tracing phone calls made, my team can do that. Try to pinpoint where it came from. If the people are cooperative, or unfortunately still have not, passed out.
So if we're going to hire a process server, well, there's two issues. One is we're going to hire a process server. The other is we're going to hire a private investigator. For a process server, what kind of questions? So you want them to be insured. What kind of questions do you think you want to ask in general?
If you're calling a private investigator to do your process serving, I mean, again, a lot of private investigators don't do process serving. Right. So you want to ask that question first. Do you do process serving? They may say yes, and you want to say, okay, well, how long have you been doing it? Because right now, a lot of them are grasping at straws just to get back into the business. So, how long have you been doing it? What, do you have any, referrals you can refer me? What does your affidavit look like? Obviously, unless it's federal, which is already done, or you already provide one. Some firms will provide one, and we just fill in the blanks. We use a software program called Serve Manager, and a lot of us do in the industry, where you get real-time notifications, which is something you're going to want. So do you have some kind of software like Serve Manager, or there's a bunch of them out there that notifies me real-time, gives me a GPS coordinate, because a lot of courts are going that way. And I get an email on when it's been served or not served, or what the issue is. Do you know the rules of when you're supposed to do service? You're supposed to do service. One service is supposed to be by 8 in the morning. One's supposed to be 9 to 5, and one's supposed to be after 6. If they don't do that, a judge that just doesn't have an overload can throw out your case because you didn't do the proper due diligence. Did you check with neighbors? Did you write ask them how they perform their duties, ask them for a copy of an affidavit. Obviously not a federal one because that's already there. You know what I mean? So ask them for a copy of an affidavit. Do they have a notary? I mean, that, we're going to get back to that. If you want a notarized affidavit, we try to do it arbitrarily just anyway, because it's, if I send you a non-notarized one, then you want a notarized one, then they're wasting time. Do you have a notary, or can you get to a notary? They're the big things that you're going to want to need to ask, because like I said, or are you a member of an organization? Jen, I think you're aware of NAPS, NAPPS. Are you a member of an organization? At least if we're members of NAPS, you have some recourse to go back on if they don't do their due diligence or their job. You can go to the NAPS board, and the NAPS board can intervene in the middle, on your behalf. I mean, I'd hate to have you do that. Jen's called me for subpoenas servers in, California. Call somebody that you trust and ask them who they know, to help you out there. I mean, we serve, a lot of places. That's the other big thing that I've seen. There's a couple, and I won't mention them. There's a couple process serving agencies that claim they're nationwide. Well, they don't have servers in every state. They're using something like NAPS, and they're bumping up the fees. Be wary of those nationwide investigation firms, those nationwide process serving firms, because like I said, they don't have a person in every place. I caught wind of a company that I was doing work for in investigations and surveillance and such. They stated they were nationwide, and they had an office in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And the only reason I caught wind of it is I did a Google search to see where I came up. Here they were saying that they had an office in Lansdale and using my information. So what they started doing was they were offered to pay retired police officers or people that could get a license, $500 or $600 a month just for an address. But yet then they subcontract the work out to somebody else. So that's a question to ask. Are you subcontracting your investigations or your process serving out to somebody else? That's it, because then I'm micromanaging because I'm subcontracting it out. That's another, big question to ask, again, these are all in my opinion, but I just think I've always been pro you guys, and on your side. I'd rather give you a referral again in California or New York or something than be the middleman. But I have a couple firms that say, I don't care. I'd rather you be the middleman and micromanage them, because again, you're small solo firms. You don't have time to micromanage them, and your paralegal or your legal secretary is too busy. So I really think recent references, copies of their work, whether it's, again, service of process or investigation, copy of their work. Obviously they can redact what they need to redact. And what kind of organizations they belong to, and again, are they insured? Some process servers are starting to get insurance. We ended up having to get cyber insurance because of the investigations we were doing for service of process, because people, a lot of people have moved lately. Or are stuck. We had a lady that we've been looking for months. She's in Florida. She's afraid to come home. So she's staying in her Florida home for the rest of the year. So we had, we got cyber insurance just because of the type of investigations that we're doing and things like that. So that's another question. Do you have cyber insurance? Do you have a VPN? So I can send you this documentation, those kind of things to ask your vendors. I mean, I know they sound like silly questions, but again, in the long run, you need to, Curtis misbehaving. In the long run, you need to look out for yourselves, your colleagues, even, I hate to say it, even the person on the other side. I mean, you don't get along, but, you want the best product for both of you and the best outcome for both sides in this situation. Again, in my opinion, it's just, how I think things need to go. We need to, your vendor needs to be willing to work as a team. I'm not saying they need to hand out their cell phone number. I mean, like Jen has my cell phone. She can text me if she needs something. And I don't mind doing that to people that I know, or that I've gotten, more than one or two cases from. How late do you work? Do you, you only work 9 to 5? The sheriffs generally only work, I've heard, like 7 to 3 or 7 to 4. Well, you need a nighttime due diligence. There are things that you need to check again with your vendors. Do you only work 9 to 5? Do you not work on weekends? Do you know the no Sunday service rules that Jen and I had talked about over last summer? Do you know the Philadelphia rules? Jen and I've had this conversation before too. People don't know, that Philadelphia, whatever that is, 504 rule or whatever the heck it is. You know what I mean? But, people don't know that rule. And, are you educated with those rules? Are you educated with the no Sunday service? It's a little checklist you can just make and, send to them and say, okay, this is what I want in order to hire you. Are you licensed? Are you insured? What's your insurance? Do you know, the rules of your state? Do you know the Philadelphia? If you're in Pennsylvania, do you know the Philadelphia County rules? Do you know the no Sunday service rules? It's, like a 12 question, 10 questions, and, then you can hire somebody. And, and I have no problem if somebody wants, a questionnaire. I have no problem, typing it up and, giving it to Jen to hand out. I have no problem at all doing that.
I think people would appreciate that if you wouldn't mind.
I think it would be, I'm speaking, I've been in this industry a long time. I worked for another gentleman from 1987 to 2005. And from 2000 to 2005, he was doing stuff I was not comfortable with at all, to the point where his license is expired. So I ended up getting mine, and he found out I got mine in all the states we were working in, and he terminated me. And I said, well, you don't have one, and you have me signing these things saying that we're still licensed investigators and process servers and blah, blah, blah. I said, we're not. I said, so I went out and got my own because, I'm signing these affidavits to cover my butt.
Yeah.
And so he got in a lot of trouble for that. But, one thing I am, and Jen can tell you, I'll go to that gray line, and I won't cross into the wrong side of the law. I'll ask Jen, and I've asked her questions, what do you think about this? And she's like, well, it's not my law, but this is what I would think, or not my area of expertise, but this is what I think. Because I don't want to put you, my clients, or my team at any risk. And if you don't, there's a lot of, unscrupulous, people out there. I know process servers that'll say they served something and they didn't even go there. That's why, again, we use this software program that does the GPS coordinates. There's a few places in Hickville, Pennsylvania, you know what I'm talking about, in the middle of the woods, nowhere, you can't get it. So my people take pictures. Do you take pictures of, when you go there every time? I foresee a lot of pushback because of everything that's going on in the courts. The other side's saying improper service, or you didn't do your thing. So if you don't have some kind of protection, again, whether it's GPS or the cameras or something, I just think there's going to be an issue. Or, get that green card back. But again, they're not delivering the green cards, those things. Or you do FedEx, and then that costs you even more. But, FedEx doesn't have you sign anymore. So they just leave it a lot of times now. And especially if you're doing something at a residential address. So, I hate to say the only recourse you all have is to actually use a process server or a sheriff, to do your work. But I just think to protect yourselves, even, during this COVID matter, I really think you need to do that. The other thing too is
signatures. I actually had a bottle of alcohol delivered, and it made it very clear that I would have to sign for it. And they just left it.
Yeah.
Left it on my porch.
Yep.
So I think that is
Yep.
it. You're right. People saying they got delivery, but there's no proof. That's a serious issue for a processor.
Exactly. And that's just it. Well, at least Amazon takes pictures of it on your porch.
Yeah.
Well, some of them, it depends. It depends on how it comes, because now Amazon's been so overwhelmed, it's coming UPS or the Postal Service. And the Postal Service isn't taking those pictures. I have a Ring doorbell, so I can see everything, but like I've gotten some Amazons, and half of them are the Postal Service, and I know my mail guy, and half of them are, actual Amazon. So, and they're being stolen or whatever. So, you're back to that problem again. Like I said, I hate to say that, we all have our challenges ahead of us, but I think you guys are going to be really challenged in the future. Like I said, whether it's service of process or investigations, because who knows how long this is going to stay. If this is a comfortable thing, is this the way it's going to stay? Again, whether it's skip tracing or surveillance or whatnot. People are leaving their homes now because they can't be evicted until July 1st, and they haven't changed their address because they still own the house. So why change the address? That way you don't find them. I think we're all going to have our hands full in the future, whether it's investigations or service of process. I know the past week we've been inundated. Like I said, last week we had well over 100 new serves come in because everybody's starting to come back and they want to get stuff scheduled, when the courts do actually let you schedule them come September. I know you're still doing, Zoom calls, and I know Montgomery County's been taking some stuff in that has been not considered emergency stuff. So they're all starting to come back. But I just think you have to keep in mind too, your process server and your investigator is going to be overwhelmed, just like you are coming back into this. You know, even again, if they're even open, you know, don't take the fact that they have a website that they're open or the phone rings and they leave a message and they're open. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're open.
You need to get somebody responding. You can't just assume. So folks, does anyone have any questions? We've been going for about 40 minutes now, but I want to make sure there are no questions for Michele before we move on. And I'll give you a minute to ask any. Michele, are there any other things you think that we should know? Any final words that you want to share? You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I did that because my phone was ringing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll make the questionnaire and send it to Jen. I just think that, you know, we all have to retrain ourselves, you know, and expect the unexpected, really. I foresee a rule or a law or something coming down about, like I said, service by email. You know, a lot of places weren't allowing to do that. Service by Facebook, you know, it was thrown out in court many times. Like Jen said, you know, both sides have to agree, but I'm just wondering if a rule or a law is going to come by. You know, again, you know, whether you use my services or not, and Jen will tell you, I say this all the time, I'm here to answer questions. You know, even if it's nothing I'm working on, or if you're, you know, you have a doubt about a service or a case or something, I'm always here to answer questions. You know, I'm not looking, you know, for the almighty dollar. It's just the way I am. Again, Jen can tell you that. You know, I'm you know, always here to, you know, Jen needs somebody to help talk about something. I'm here and to talk about it. And you know, I'm a woman in a man's dominated industry, so I see both sides of this. You know, so like I said, you know, ask questions, whether it's investigations or service or process, totally irrelevant to COVID. You know, ask questions, whether it's me or, you know, another, you know, trusted investigator. You know, if they're not there to help you, even when you're not sending them $1, then you really need to move on to another person. Honestly, it's, again, my opinion, but.
Well, thank you so much, Michele. I do appreciate it. If there aren't any questions, this of course has been recorded and we will put it up online. When Michele sends me her sheet, I will put that up with this, or rather PVA will put it up with this. Of course, if you have any questions later on, you may feel free to contact me, and I'll put you in touch with Michele. And you know, thank you, Michele, for your time. I know you're very busy and we can hear your phone ringing, so I appreciate your taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to help us. And I will say, folks, remember that if you need to get things served soon, Tim says you're a very good presenter, Michele. Thanks for your insight. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
If you need to get something served anytime soon, you'd better get on it now.
Yeah,
and don't
most
assume,
definitely.
Yeah, don't assume, as Michele said, just because the phone rings and you left a message or you send an email or they have a website, that they're still in business or that they're actively serving. Make sure you get a response, because you don't want to send something through whatever software or system you're using only to find out a few days later or a week later or a month later that it never got served, and find yourself at risk of malpractice because you messed something up. So make sure that your person is still in business. Michele, thanks again. I always appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you.
You're welcome. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.